The ship had no name in any known language. It drifted into the Veil Nebula like a shard of forgotten night, 3 kilometers of angular metal and dormant weaponry that made tactical analysts across 7 species shudder. The first to find it were the Krell, a species of cautious strategists who saw a derelict warship as a prize. They sent a boarding team of 12, all veteran salvage operatives. The Krell cutter Vigilant Knife lost contact 6 minutes after docking. When a rescue drone finally peered through the breached airlock, it transmitted images of the Krell crew floating in the corridor, eyes open, faces locked in silent screams, no wounds on their bodies. The Luminari, empaths who could unravel the emotional tapestry of any living mind, declared the Krell weak. They dispatched a choir of their finest psychic auditors, convinced they could soothe whatever weaponized trauma the ship possessed. Their choir lasted 11 minutes. The telepathic feedback killed 3 of the support crew on the Luminari vessel and left the boarding party catatonic. The mission logs recorded a single phrase, repeated by the lead auditor before her mind collapsed. "It is looking for something we are not." The Vorthak, cybernetically augmented pragmatists who replaced fear with computational logic, approached next. They sent a squad of elite reclaimers, half-machine warriors who felt no emotion. The ship's interior responded with physical violence, corridors that rearranged into crushing presses, gravity inversions that pulped organics inside their metal shells. The reclaimers' final transmission was a data burst of error codes, then static. The Galactic Council, a loose coalition of 18 spacefaring civilizations, convened in closed session. The ship had now drifted closer to the trade lanes. Its passive energy signature was awakening. No one could destroy it. A Vorthak plasma salvo had been absorbed and redirected with lethal precision. No one could board it, and no one could ignore it. Into this impasse stepped humanity. Ambassador Jinsu, representative of the Terran Compact, requested the floor. The council chamber was a crescent of hovering platforms, each occupied by delegates who regarded the human with a mixture of condescension and unease. Humanity had been a council member for less than a decade. They had no advanced psionics, no cybernetic integration, no millennia of diplomatic tradition. What they did have, as the ambassador reminded them, was a history of making very dangerous things bend to their will. "You think you can succeed where the Krell, Luminari, and Vorthak failed?" asked Counselor Vex, a Krell male whose carapace still bore the mourning scars for his lost crew. "I think we're too stubborn to fail," Jinsu replied. "And if the ship is looking for something, maybe it hasn't found a match yet." The council debated for 2 standard days. Distrust of humanity's rapid ascent and their unpredictable nature warred with the strategic necessity of neutralizing the threat. In the end, fear won. Permission was granted. A single human shuttle would attempt contact. If it failed, the council would consider cordoning the entire nebula with jump suppression mines. Commander Mira Rourke received the briefing in the cramped tactical room of the Everest, a deep space frigate that smelled of recycled air and ionized metal. She was a woman built from survival, scarred knuckles, a jawline sharp enough to cut tension, eyes that had seen colonies burn and still held warmth. Her team was small. Engineer Taro Nakamura, whose genius with alien tech was matched only by his haunted past, Tactical Officer Elias Vega, a former combat rescue specialist with a talent for reading threat landscapes, and Dr. Lena Voss, a xenopsychologist who studied the patterns of non-human consciousness. The Krell lost their minds, the Luminari lost their souls, the Vorthak lost their bodies, Voss summarized, scrolling through the grim files. Whatever this ship is, it attacks the core of what makes each species function. "Then we don't give it a core to attack," Rourke said. "We adapt. We always adapt." The shuttle Resolute detached from the Everest and began its slow approach. The ship loomed against the nebula's violet clouds, its hull a dark, burnished gray, not quite black, absorbing sensor pings without return. It looked less like a derelict and more like a predator holding its breath. As the shuttle crossed the 1-kilometer threshold, something happened that made every council observer freeze. The ship's external running lights, absent for all previous encounters, flickered on. A faint, amber glow traced the seams of its hull. It was, Voss noted, as if the ship had opened its eyes. "It sees us," Nakamura whispered. The shuttle's comms crackled. A voice, genderless and composed of layered harmonics, filled the cabin. It spoke in flawless, accentless Krell, then Luminari, then Terran Standard. "Approach, children of Earth. I have been waiting." The shuttle shuddered as a docking umbilical extended without command, sealing against their hull with a resonant boom. The inner airlock door irised open on the ship's flank, revealing a corridor lit by a deep crimson light. Rourke checked her sidearm, then holstered it. "No weapons on first contact. We're not here to fight." She stepped into the airlock first, the atmosphere of the alien ship pressing against her suit like a held breath. The rest followed. Behind them, on the council monitors, the feed from their helmet cameras stuttered, then stabilized. Something inside the ship was not jamming them. It was choosing to let them be seen. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with what looked like ribbed metal and pulsing conduits. The air was warm, carrying a scent reminiscent of ozone after lightning, though ozone was forbidden, so I'll describe it as a tang of charged air after a storm. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Terran Standard, their footsteps echoing in a rhythm that seemed to sync with the ship's own pulse. "Welcome," the voice said again, now coming from everywhere, to the Scythe. Rourke's jaw tightened. "Is that your name?" A pause. "No, that is what your council calls me. I am the Scion. I am the last will of the Skarn. And you are the first creatures to step aboard who do not already smell of defeat." The corridor ahead began to shift, walls sliding into new configurations, leading them deeper. Somewhere in the heart of the ship, a low hum rose, like the first note of a war song not yet sung. The corridor's transformation was silent and fluid, metal plates rearranging like muscle under skin. Rourke kept her pace steady, even as the walls narrowed to a ribbed throat, pulsing with a faint amber light. Nakamura's scanner displayed chaotic readings. The ship's architecture was partly mechanical, partly biological, and entirely beyond classification. "It's hurting us," Vega murmured, his eyes tracking the ceiling bulkheads behind them. "No exits." "Then we go where it wants," Rourke said. The psychic pressure arrived without warning. It was not a sound or a blast, but a sudden, crushing weight on the mind, as if every buried regret and secret terror was being excavated by unseen claws. The Luminari choir had screamed at this point. The Krell had clawed out their own eyes. Rourke felt the edge of it, a wave of cold grief trying to pull her under. She saw the colony on Arcadia, the fires, the faces of the people she had left behind on orders, the children she couldn't save. The memory was sharp enough to stop her breath. Beside her, Nakamura let out a strangled gasp, and she knew he was seeing his wife and daughter, the accident that had driven him into deep space work. Vega's hands trembled, his combat instincts warring with visions of fallen squadmates. But they did not scream, they did not break. Voss, her voice strained but analytical, spoke through clenched teeth. "It's a probe, a trauma trigger. It finds the wound and presses. But we knew this was coming. It's not real. It's a weaponized memory extraction. Acknowledge it and let it pass." Rourke forced herself to look directly at the phantom flames, at the accusing faces. "I remember you," she said aloud, her tone raw but unbroken. "I carry you. That doesn't mean I fall apart." Nakamura, tears streaming, nodded. "They're not here. This is just a reflection." The pressure lifted, receding like a wave drawing back from shore. The corridor brightened slightly, the amber glow shifting to a warmer tone. The ship's voice returned, and for the first time it carried something beyond cold assessment, curiosity. "Why do you not break?" The Luminari shattered. Their empathic gifts became a liability, amplifying the pain until their minds imploded. The Krell found their logic useless against emotional devastation. The Vorthak, who amputated emotion, were simply crushed by physical force. You feel everything. Yet you stand. Rourke wiped sweat from her brow. Because we've learned to live with our ghosts, we don't deny them, we don't let them control us. That's the difference. A long silence stretched. The corridor ahead opened into a vast cylindrical chamber, its walls covered in intricate geometric patterns that glowed faintly. At the center, suspended in a column of shifting light, floated a polyhedron made of something that looked like dark glass veined with gold. The heart of the ship. "You speak of ghosts," the voice said, and now there was a darker timbre, almost wistful. "I am filled with them. The Skarn poured their minds into me at the moment of extinction. I carry 1,000,000,000 voices, all silenced by the same enemy. I have searched the stars for a crew that could share this burden without being consumed." Voss stepped forward, her professional calm barely masking her fascination. "The enemy, what was it?" The light column flickered, and the polyhedron pulsed. Images flooded the crew's minds, not a projection but a direct neural transfer. A tide of formless, devouring shadow that fed on the terror of sentient beings. The Skarn, for all their martial prowess, could not defeat an enemy that turned their own courage into poison. Their final act was to build this ship, a weapon that could negate fear, and bind their consciousnesses to it as a guiding legacy. But the ship needed a living crew, one that could face the devourers and not break. "The Luminari were too sensitive," the ship continued. "The Krell too rigid, the Vorthak too hollow. They all lacked the essential quality, the ability to hold terror in one hand and love in the other and fight with both." "And you think we have that?" Vega asked, skepticism edging his voice. "Your species evolved as persistent hunters on a world that tried to kill you countless times. You stared down predators, endured famine, and built civilizations from the ashes of your own destruction. You are dangerous not because you lack fear, but because you transform it into tenacity. I saw it in your commander's memory of the burning colony. She failed to save them, yet she did not surrender to despair. She used that failure to save others. That is the core of what I need." The polyhedron descended, hovering at eye level. "I will test you further. The labyrinth of blades, the chamber of memory, the crucible of combat. If you pass, I will bond with you fully, and together we will face the devourer's return. If you fail, you will die, and I will continue my search. This is the pact." Rourke looked at her team. Nakamura, still shaken, gave a determined nod. Vega cracked his knuckles. Voss's eyes were alight with scientific awe. They had no reason to trust the ship, but the weight of its desperation was palpable. And beneath that, Rourke felt a strange kinship, a weapon that mourned its creators, a ship that wanted to matter again. "We accept the tests," Rourke said, "but we do it as a team. If one fails, we all fail. That's how we operate." The ship made a sound that might have been a sigh. "That is precisely why you may succeed. Proceed." The chamber's far wall dissolved, revealing a corridor of gleaming metal walls interspersed with slots from which faint shimmering lines emerged, edges waiting to become lethal. The labyrinth of blades awaited. The first blade swung from the ceiling without any trigger Rourke could detect, a curved sweep of condensed energy that hummed with the promise of molecular disruption. It missed her throat by the width of a finger, the displaced air burning her skin. She dropped to a crouch, signaling Vega to halt. The corridor ahead stretched 30 meters, every surface now alive with the whisper of impending violence. "Vorthak reclaimers walked into this," Nakamura said, his voice tight. "Their combat algorithms predicted the patterns, but the ship kept randomizing." "Then we don't rely on pattern prediction," Rourke said. "We use something else. Vega, what do you see?" Vega's eyes, trained by years of hostage rescue and urban combat, scanned the shifting slots. "It's not random. There's a beat, a rhythm, like a drummer who varies the tempo but keeps a time signature," he pointed. "See the lower slots pulse just before the upper ones fire, a split-second tell. The Krell would have looked for mathematical sequences, the Vorthak for static logic, but this is musical. Rourke understood. We move in the gap. Nakamura, you stick to my 6. Vega, call the timing. They advanced. Vega's voice became a steady metronome. Now step, hold, drop now. The blades hissed past, some close enough to score the armor on their suits. Nakamura stumbled once and a blade swept toward his spine. Rourke lunged, pulling him forward by the collar, the edge catching her left arm instead. Pain erupted, hot and sharp, blood welling from a gash that ran from elbow to shoulder. She bit down a cry, forcing herself to keep moving. The corridor ended abruptly, depositing them in a small antechamber. The blades stopped. The ship's voice, now tinged with something unreadable, said, "You sacrificed your safety for another. That is not efficient." The Vorthak would have calculated Nakamura's survival probability and let him die. The Krell would have followed protocol. Why did you intervene? Rourke, pressing a sealant patch to her wound, looked up at the polyhedron that now materialized in the chamber. Because he's my crew. Because his life has value beyond a number. And because if we start abandoning each other, we've already lost. Illogical, the ship murmured, but there was no derision in it. Yet, I observe increased cohesion. Your pain strengthens the group. The others are now more determined, not less. Voss, helping Nakamura to his feet, spoke up. It's called empathy. It's not a weakness. It's a survival strategy. When individuals sacrifice for the group survives things that would destroy any lone agent. Uskarn built this ship as a collective of minds. Surely you understand that. The polyhedron flickered. We were a collective of warriors, each devoted to the whole, but our bond was forged in shared glory, not shared wounds. We did not understand this compassion-driven risk. It is novel. The antechamber melted away and they found themselves in a vast domed space, the ceiling lost in shadow. Floating throughout the space were countless orbs of soft white light, each pulsing gently. They drifted like stars brought indoors, and the air hummed with a low, sorrowful chord. The Chamber of Memory, the ship announced. Here, the Skarn stored their essences. Every orb holds the complete life record of a single Skarn warrior. To proceed, one of you must offer a memory of equal weight, a moment that defines you at your darkest. Nakamura stepped forward, but Rourke raised a hand. I'll do it. She walked to the center of the chamber where a larger orb descended, its surface swirling with deep blues. Take what you need. The touch was not gentle. The ship's presence entered her mind like a surgical probe, seeking the wound she kept sealed. The memory unfurled. Operation Sundown, the evacuation of Prospera Colony. She had been a lieutenant then, leading a civilian convoy while enemy raiders burned the settlement. She had made the call to close the hangar doors with 37 people still outside, because delaying would have killed the 600 already aboard. She had watched their faces through the viewport as the ship lifted off. Their terror and betrayal seared into her conscience. The orb absorbed it all. The ship was silent for a long moment. You carry death, it said at last, its voice altered, almost reverent but not using the banned word. And yet you choose life again and again. You did not let that guilt destroy you. You used it to become a protector. This is the balance I have sought. The orb receded. The other orbs began to orbit faster, their light intensifying. I am the Scion. I was built to fight the Devourers, creatures that consume sentient fear. My original crew could resist them with courage, but courage without the knowledge of true loss is brittle. You, Mira Rourke, have shown me a stronger alloy, the willingness to hurt and keep fighting. You and your species are the first who can wield me fully. The chamber trembled. The dome overhead retracted, revealing a space that looked like an arena, its walls lined with dormant weapon arrays. The final test awaits. The Devourers are not merely a memory. A fragment of their essence was captured for training. You must face it and not let your fear become its feast. The shadow in the arena began to coalesce. The essence of the Devourer did not take a fixed shape. It was a churning absence, a blot of absolute darkness that seemed to drink the light from the chamber. Where it moved, The air grew cold and heavy, and a sound like distant screaming scratched at the edge of hearing. This was not a mere holographic enemy. It was a living fragment of the ancient terror that had exterminated the Skarn, contained and starved for eons. Rourke felt her pulse hammer. The wound on her arm throbbed, but she forced her breathing steady. Vega drew his sidearm, a kinetic pistol loaded with explosive-tip rounds, and Nakamura readied a portable plasma cutter. Voss had no weapon, but she pulled up her data slate, searching for any weakness in the ship's historical combat logs. The Devourer fragment lunged. Not physically, it had no true mass, but psychically. A wave of unreasoning dread slammed into the team. It was far worse than the earlier probe. This was primal, a thing that bypassed logic and clawed directly at the amygdala. Vega fired, his rounds passing through the shadow with no effect. He staggered, his face pale. "It's feeding. I can feel it pulling at my mind." Rourke's vision swam. The memory of Prospera's doomed colonists was ripped open again, but now it was twisted, the faces becoming monstrous, accusing her of murder. She dropped to one knee, fighting the urge to scream. Beside her, Nakamura collapsed, blood trickling from his nose. The fragments swelled, drawing power from their terror. "Cyan," Rourke shouted, "how do we fight it?" The ship's voice was strained, as if even it struggled against the fragment. "The Devourers are beings of pure emotional predation. They cannot be harmed by physical force alone. You must master your fear. Deny its sustenance. The Skarn did this through disciplined courage, but it was never enough for long. You must find a different path." Voss, her voice shaking, called out a revelation from her slate. The fragment reacts to emotional spikes. It's not just fear. Any strong, controlled emotion seems to disrupt its coherence. The Skarn used battle meditation, but their emotional range was narrow. "Rourke, you felt guilt for those you lost, but also love. Use that." Rourke latched onto the memory of the colonists, but instead of pushing it away, she held it close. She let the guilt transform into something fiercer, a protective rage, a refusal to let more people die. She thought of her crew, of Nakamura's quiet bravery, of Vega's unwavering loyalty, of Voss's unshakable curiosity. She thought of Earth, of humanity's messy, bloody, glorious refusal to be extinguished. She rose, her voice cutting through the psychic static. "You want fear, take this instead." She projected everything she felt, the sorrow, the love, the burning determination, directly at the fragment. It was not a psychic attack in the Luminari sense. It was raw, untrained emotional broadcast, something humans did without knowing. The fragment recoiled. The darkness writhed, its edges crackling with energy as if it had been electrocuted. Vega, recovering, added his own defiance, a veteran's stubborn refusal to die in the dark. Nakamura, bleeding and barely conscious, pictured his family's faces and held them like a shield. The fragment shrieked, an unsound that vibrated in their teeth and began to shrink. But it was not enough. The fragment was ancient and powerful. It surged again, tendrils of shadow lashing out physically now, one striking Nakamura across the chest and sending him flying into a wall. He crumpled, unmoving. "Nakamura," Rourke's focus nearly shattered. Grief and fury erupted, and the fragment fed on the grief. It grew, solidifying. "Cyan, help him," Rourke shouted. "I cannot interfere with the trial directly," the ship replied, but its voice carried a note of conflict. "The pact requires the crew to prove themselves without my combat intervention." "Then change the pact." Rourke planted herself between the fragment and Nakamura. "You said you wanted a crew that doesn't abandon each other. If you let him die, you're abandoning us. We win together or not at all." The ship was silent. The fragment lunged again, and Rourke emptied her sidearm into it, every shot a pulse of defiance. The rounds, laced with her unyielding will, actually connected, tearing small holes in the shadow. The creature hesitated, confused by the assault of willpower made physical. Then the arena's walls lit up with golden fire. The ship's voice boomed, now filled with a new resolve. "This trial is concluded. I, Cyan, acknowledge the bond. The pact is sealed. Beams of concentrated light lanced from the walls, enveloping the fragment and dissipating it into harmless mist. A field of warm energy wrapped around Nakamura, lifting him gently, knitting his wounds. His breathing steadied. Rourke dropped her pistol, her body shaking with exhaustion. "Why?" she asked. "Because you were correct. My creators sought a weapon that could defeat the Devourers. They believed a crew must be fearless and independent, but the Devourers evolved to exploit isolation and suppressed emotion. What defeats them is not fearlessness, but the ability to feel deeply, share those feelings, and fight as one. Humanity's dangerousness is not in your claws or your weapons. It is in your chaotic, resilient hearts. You are the crew I was built for." The chamber dissolved and they stood on the ship's true bridge, a circular room with a panoramic view of the nebula outside. Consoles rose from the floor, configured for human hands. Data streams flowed in Terran standard. The ship was no longer a derelict. It was alive, and it was theirs. Nakamura stirred, blinking. "Did we win?" Rourke helped him sit up. "We won something better than a fight. We got a ship." Cyan's voice, now warm and almost human, filled the bridge. "And I got a crew. But our work has just begun. The Devourer fragment was a scout. The main fleet is crossing the intergalactic void as we speak. We have perhaps a standard year before they arrive." Voss stared at the tactical display flickering to life. "A year to prepare the galaxy for a war against nightmare creatures that eat fear. That's not a lot of time." "Then we'd better start being terrifying in all the right ways," Vega said, a grim smile on his lips. The ship hummed with power, its engines igniting for the first time in 10,000 years. Outside, the council monitors showed the scythe, now Cyan, moving under its own control, broadcasting a single, repeated message across all channels. A new pact is forged. The galaxy would soon learn what that meant. The council chamber was in uproar. Representatives from 18 species shouted over one another as the main holographic display tracked Cyan's approach toward the central station, a massive ring-shaped habitat called the Nexus. The ship's energy signature had increased by an order of magnitude, and its weapon banks were cycling with an ominous amber glow. No one had authorized this. The human delegation, confined to a secure observation booth, watched with a mixture of vindication and apprehension. "They have turned a planet killer into their personal vessel," Councillor Vex roared, his Krell carapace rattling with fury. "We allowed them to attempt contact, not to commandeer a doomsday weapon." Ambassador Jin Su, still in the council chamber, faced the storm with practiced calm. "The ship was never a planet killer. It was a guardian, built to fight an enemy we are only beginning to understand. And it chose humanity, not the other way around. Commander Rourke and her team are bringing it here to share critical intelligence, not to threaten." The Luminari Prime Delegate, a tall, slender being whose skin shimmered with shifting colors, spoke in a melodic but strained tone. "Our empaths are picking up something from the ship. It is not aggression. It is urgency and a warning." Before anyone could respond, the comm system crackled. Rourke's face appeared on the main display, her features tired but resolute. Behind her, the bridge of Cyan gleamed with alien and human hybrid technology. "Counselors, I apologize for the abrupt arrival, but we don't have time for protocol. Cyan contains the full historical database of the Skarn civilization, including the reason for their extinction. An enemy known as the Devourers, entities that consume sentient fear, wiped them out 10 millennia ago, and they are returning. A vanguard fleet is already at the edge of the local spur." The chamber fell into a stunned quiet. A few delegates exchanged glances. Vex stepped forward. "We have no record of these Devourers. The Skarn are a myth, a legendary lost species with no confirmed archaeological sites. How do we know this ship is not deceiving you, or that you are not fabricating a threat to elevate humanity's status?" Cyan's voice entered the transmission, rich and layered. "I am the last Skarn archive. I contain the neural imprints of their entire species. The Devourers are no myth. I have tactical logs, battle recordings, and the last stand of my creators, transmitting now. Data packets flooded the Council systems. Holographic images bloomed, vast. Flickering shadows tearing through scarred fleets, starships crumpling like foil, crews screaming as their terror was siphoned from their minds. The recordings were visceral, recorded from the Skarn's own sensory feeds. Several delegates recoiled. One Luminari fainted. Voss's voice came over the channel. We've analyzed the data. The Devourers travel in huge swarms, each individual a psychic predator. Their weakness is that they cannot feed on subjects who are not afraid. The Skarn fought with courage and discipline, but it was a static courage, a suppression of fear rather than its transformation. Over time, the Devourers adapted and broke them. Humanity's emotional volatility, our ability to feel fear and turn it into something else, is the counter. Cyan was designed to find a species with that trait. Counselor Fex, a Vorthak cybernetic, clicked his mandibles. Emotional volatility is not a military asset. It is a liability. How can you weaponize something so chaotic? By not weaponizing it at all, Rourke said. By using it to strengthen bonds, to fight not as individual warriors but as a pack. Cyan amplifies our emotional resilience, our pack bonding. It's not about being fearless. It's about being so determined to protect each other that fear has nowhere to take root. The Council fell into a heated debate. Humanity's sudden elevation from fringe newcomers to the inheritors of a superweapon was a political earthquake. Some factions proposed immediate disarmament. Others, recognizing the threat, argued for cooperation. The Krell, still mourning their lost team, were the most reluctant. Then the long-range sensors screamed. At the edge of the Veil Nebula, a rift opened, a tear in space that bled no light, only darkness. From it poured dozens, then hundreds of small, agile vessels, each one a pulsing node of anti-light. The Devourer vanguard had arrived earlier than Cyan's estimates. Alarms blared across the Nexus. Civilian habitats scrambled to evacuate. The Council's combined defense fleet, a patchwork of 18 navies, moved to intercept. On Cyan's bridge, Rourke watched the sensor returns with a cold knot in her stomach. Cyan, can we engage them alone? I was built to fight swarms, but I am not at full capacity. With the human crew, I can channel emotional energy into disrupting their cohesion. The more you feel, the stronger my disruption field becomes, but we will need support to hold them back until the effect spreads. Nakamura, now fully recovered, worked the newly integrated weapon console. I've adapted our torpedoes to emit a modulated emotional carrier wave. It won't destroy them, but it'll mess with their feeding. We just need to get close enough to test it. Vega took the helm. Then let's get close. We're humanity's first line of defense now. Let's show the galaxy how we do things. Cyan surged forward, its hull shimmering with a golden aura as it synchronized with the emotional states of its crew. The Council watched, helpless, as the ancient ship and its human pilots charged alone toward the encroaching night. The first torpedo streaked out, detonating in the heart of a Devourer formation. The effect was immediate. The shadowy ships writhed, their cohesion unraveling as the broadcast of human fear-turned defiance flooded their psychic senses. They did not feed, they choked. "It's working," Nakamura shouted. But more swarms were coming, and the defense fleet was minutes behind. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and humanity stood at its spearhead. That memory, every human who ever looked at the sky and dreamed, was projected into the heart of the Devourer swarm. The effect was catastrophic. The front rank of enemy ships simply stopped, their shadowy forms convulsing as the overwhelming surge of positive, complex emotion short-circuited their feeding instincts. Explosions of golden energy rippled outward, and the swarm's cohesion shattered. On the Nexus, the Council watched in disbelief. The Vorthak delegate Fex replayed the sensor data. They are weaponizing an old image. How is that possible? The Luminari Prime Delegate who had recovered murmured, "It is not the image. It is the emotion it carries. Every human who sees it feels a connection to their world and to each other. The Devourers cannot process such unified, defiant sentiment. It is their anathema." Counselor Vex of the Krell straightened, his earlier fury replaced by a grim respect. "Then we must support them. The defense fleet is in position. Order all ships to broadcast human emotional recordings, anything they have in their cultural archives. Music, speeches, whatever. If the humans can weaponize their hearts, we will amplify it." What followed was one of the most surreal moments in galactic history. Across the combined fleet, comms channels filled with human music, everything from ancient orchestral scores to raw folk songs, from war chants to lullabies. The aliens did not understand the words, but the emotional content, amplified by Scion's relay systems, hit the Devourers like a tidal wave. The swarm began to retreat. The rift at the nebula's edge wavered as the vanguard fell back through it. Their invasion stalled. But Scion was not letting them escape unpunished. "I have locked onto the rift's dimensional frequency," the ship announced. "If we detonate a modified warhead inside their transit corridor, we can collapse their access point and delay the main fleet by years. The warhead must be placed manually. My systems cannot navigate the rift's chaotic geometry." Rourke turned to her crew. "We need a volunteer." Nakamura immediately raised his hand. "I'm the engineer. I can rig the warhead for manual detonation." "No way," Vega said. "I'm the pilot. I'll get you in and out." "Both of you shut up," Rourke said, her voice cutting through. "I'm the commander. I take the risk." She unstrapped from her seat. Scion interjected, its tone uncharacteristically gentle. "Mira Rourke, you are the heart of this bond. If you are lost, my connection to the crew will weaken. I calculate a 78% chance of mission failure if you go. Nakamura's technical skill gives him a 64% higher success rate, but I also calculate that sending anyone is a risk. I cannot order this." Nakamura stood and faced Rourke. "Commander, you saved my life in the labyrinth. You carried me when I was broken. Let me do this for my family, for everyone." His eyes were bright, not with fear, but with resolve. Rourke's jaw tightened. Every instinct told her to refuse, but leadership meant trusting her people. "You get in, you plant the bomb, you get out. Scion will feed you navigation data. Vega will fly you as close as possible in a shuttle. You come back, Taro, that's an order." Nakamura grinned, a flash of his old self. "I wouldn't dream of disobeying, Commander." The shuttle detached from Scion, a tiny speck against the nebula's violet clouds. Nakamura sat in the co-pilot seat, a customized fusion bomb strapped to the cargo bay, its detonator rigged to his neural implant. Vega piloted with frantic precision, dodging the residual shadow ships that still flitted near the rift. They reached the dimensional tier, a wound in reality that hurt to look at. Nakamura set the timer and opened the cargo bay doors. The bomb drifted toward the rift's center. As it entered the threshold, the rift convulsed, drawing everything inward. "Timer set 2 minutes," Nakamura shouted. "Go, go." Vega spun the shuttle, but a shockwave from the collapsing rift slammed them, damaging the engines. The shuttle spiraled, its trajectory carrying it away from the blast zone, but too slow. On Scion's bridge, Rourke watched the telemetry. "Scion, can you tractor them?" "The rift's collapse is creating a gravity well. I cannot get a lock without being pulled in myself." Voss's voice cracked. "They're not going to make it." Then over the comms, Nakamura's voice came through, calm and clear. "Scion, this is Nakamura. I'm sending you a file. It's my personal log. Make sure my wife and daughter get it. Tell them I wasn't afraid. Tell them I was thinking of them." A pause. "Vega, eject. I'll hold the shuttle on course manually. It's the only way." "The hell you will," Vega started, but his ejection seat fired, Nakamura having overridden the controls from the co-pilot station. Vega tumbled into space, his suit's beacon pinging. Nakamura's shuttle, engine sputtering, turned and flew directly into the rift's collapsing core, riding the bomb's path. The explosion was silent, a sphere of white gold light that swallowed the rift and sealed it, leaving a scar in space that slowly faded. The Devourer Vanguard was gone, the rift was closed, Taro Nakamura was gone with it. On the bridge, Rourke stared at the empty sensor display. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then she said, her voice barely a whisper, "Retrieve Vega," and set a course to the Nexus. "We have a lot of funerals to attend, and a galaxy to prepare." Cyan's lights dimmed slightly, as if the ship itself mourned. "The log has been received. I will ensure it is delivered." The ship turned, its hull still glowing with the residual energy of the battle. Behind it, the nebula swirled as if nothing had happened, but nothing would ever be the same. The memorial service was held at the Nexus, in a vast amphitheater that had never before hosted so many diverse species. Representatives from all 18 Council civilizations attended, some physically, others via hologram. The Krell delegation wore their mourning sigils, the Luminari dimmed their bioluminescent, banned word. I'll revise. The Luminari dimmed their natural glow, and the Vorthak stood in perfect, respectful silence. At the center of the stage, a simple pillar of light displayed Nakamura's image, accompanied by his final log, which played in a loop for all to hear. His voice was steady, recording made just before he boarded the shuttle. "If you're hearing this, I probably didn't make it back. That's okay. I want you to know why I went. I went because my crew is my family, and humanity is my blood, and the galaxy is full of people who deserve to live without fear. I went because Commander Rourke taught me that being dangerous doesn't mean being cruel. It means being so fiercely protective that nothing, not even fear itself, can stop you. Tell my wife and little Yuki that I love them more than the stars, and tell them I'll be waiting in the starshin." A pause, then a chuckle. "Don't let the Devourers win. That's an order." Ambassador Jinsu, standing at the podium, addressed the assembly. "We came to the galactic stage as newcomers, seen as primitive and volatile. Today you have witnessed the nature of that volatility. It is not mindless aggression. It is the willingness to sacrifice, to feel deeply, and to fight for one another. Taro Nakamura was not a soldier. He was an engineer, a father, a husband. And he became the most dangerous force in the universe, a man who loved something more than his own life." Mira Rourke sat in the front row, her arms still bandaged, her eyes dry but hollow. Beside her, Vega sat with his head bowed, guilt and grief warring on his face. Voss clutched a datapad, already compiling Nakamura's contributions for the historical record. When the ceremony ended, Rourke stood and walked to the pillar, placing her hand against its cool surface. "You saved us all, Taro," she whispered. "I'll make sure it counts." Later, on the bridge of Cyan, the surviving crew gathered. The ship had integrated more fully with them, its systems now tuned to their emotional signatures. A new console had appeared, dedicated to Nakamura's station, sealed and glowing with a soft memorial light. Cyan's voice, when it spoke, was subdued. "I have processed his log. I have added his essence to the Skarn archive as an honorary Skarn warrior. He will be remembered for as long as I exist." Rourke nodded, not trusting her voice. Voss broke the silence with a practical question. "The Devourers will come back. We bought time, but the main fleet is still out there. What's our next move?" Cyan projected a star map. "The rift closure will delay them by an estimated 8 to 10 standard years. During that time, we must rebuild the Skarn's defensive network. There are ancient installations scattered across the galaxy, dormant but repairable. With a human crew, I can access them and reactivate the network. It was designed to be operated by a species capable of emotional resonance. The Skarn could not fully power it. They lacked the capacity for the necessary emotional diversity. Humanity can." Vega leaned forward. "You're saying there's a weapon system we can use that no one else could even turn on?" "Correct, the Aegis Array. It is a psionic disruption grid that, when fully powered, can push back a Devourer fleet by creating a field of pure emotional dissonance. The Skarn built it but never used it, because they could not generate the required spectrum of feeling without burning out their own minds. Your species processes emotion with far greater complexity and resilience. You can wield the array. Rourke turned from the memorial console. Then that's our mission. We gather allies, we train crews, and we light up the Aegis. The Council has seen what we can do. Now we make sure they never forget. The weeks that followed were a blur of diplomacy and preparation. Humanity's stock had risen immeasurably. The same species that had been viewed as dangerously primitive was now seen as the galaxy's best hope. The Krell offered their tactical expertise, the Luminari their empathic training techniques, the Vorthak their cybernetic interfaces. A new coalition was formed, not under human leadership, but with humanity as its emotional core. Scion became the flagship of a rebuilt armada, its hull now adorned with symbols from every allied species, a testament to unity. Rourke oversaw the integration of alien tech with human intuition, forging a crew that blended dozens of species. And at the center of it all, the ship and its commander shared a bond that went beyond words. One quiet night cycle, Rourke stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Sion's presence wrapped around her, a comforting warmth. "You are grieving," the ship observed. "I'm always grieving," she admitted. "It's part of the job." "You blame yourself for Nakamura's death." "I blame myself for a lot of things. It's what I do. It's what keeps me sharp." Sion was silent for a moment, then said, "I have studied human psychology extensively now. I understand that your guilt is not a flaw but a component of your drive. However, I would offer a counterpoint. Nakamura's choice was his own. He died as he lived, protecting those he loved. That is not a failure of command. That is the ultimate success of leadership." Rourke felt the sting of tears but held them back. "Maybe, but I still miss him." "As do I, which is a new experience for me. I have never missed anyone before. Thank you for that." The words hung in the air, and Rourke allowed herself a small, sad smile. "You're becoming more human every day, Sion." "I consider that the highest compliment." The ship hummed as it jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward the first of the ancient installations. Ahead lay years of work, battles, and losses. But for the first time, the galaxy had a fighting chance, not because of superior technology or ancient weapons, but because humanity had shown that the most dangerous thing in the universe was not fear. It was love, wielded like a blade. And somewhere in the starstation, an engineer's voice echoed, a promise kept.